or in containers also. This one is called Skyscraper Dark Purple. Now, this won't be on your handout because this was a spontaneous thing that I did this morning, okay? Because we just got in a huge new shipment. But this is considered an annual salvia, and the hummingbirds absolutely love these plants. So this is a beautiful purplish color. I think it says dark purple, but it's not particularly purple in my book. Okay, so that's a beauty. Here's one that goes really well with it, same family, and it's skyscraper pink. But aren't they fun colors together? And the hummingbirds again, love that. You could even add and would be lovely with it. Now that's another dark purple. Okay, so we'll add him to the group. And this one is not big enough for you to see, but it's called Purple and Bloom, and it will too have a cascading blossom to it. And if you pick some of these every now and then, that's good for the plant, because when you do that or you deadhead, that means it continues to bloom heavily, and it will bloom until frost takes it out. Now, everybody says, okay, red is really the attractant. I've certainly had plenty of hummingbirds come to these, so it doesn't just have to be red. But this one is red, and it's called Roman red. And you'll find these when we get ourselves organized, because we got something like 30 carts plus in today, just this morning alone. And it's not quite as organized as I would like. But you will find these with the salvia. Hopefully, they'll all be together soon. Now, saying that, there are also perennial plants that are very similar to that I want to talk a little bit about. And that is a group called Agastache, Agastache, Agastache. This one is Kuda's Silver Blue. I haven't grown this particular variety before, but I know that they're wonderful hummingbird plants. So that's a goodie. And let me share one other over here. Going back to, again, this is a perennial salvia, and it's Salvia macrophylla hot lips. So it's red, and it is, as I said, perennial. So you can have both, and they're pretty much middle of the border plants when you're using them. I do have some pictures that I'd like to share with you that I've taken at various times of the things that I really do enjoy having in the garden. First thing is, it's wonderful to be able to entertain outside, and certainly we're all encouraged to do that right now. And it doesn't have to be a huge arrangement. These are tiny little things sitting on that table, because it's not a big table, and hopefully somebody's going to have a little private visit down there in the outdoor patio, sunken patio. And so there's just a collection of a few little blossoms in those tiny vases. Okay. Now, what are some of my most popular plants? This one has not come into bloom yet, and I may have mentioned it in my last program, but it bears mentioning again because it is a hydrangea family, and there are so many hydrangeas. Delightful, and they bloom at different times. This particular one is the Nico blue, the old-fashioned one, but I have a number of others too, and they are fantastic for arranging. This is a fun thing, and I actually have some of that behind me, which I will show you in a moment. Viburnum, they too have many different varieties, and they are coming into bloom at different periods, which is good. If you've got a number of them, they sort of succeed one another as far as bloom time is concerned. Actually, this is not the variety that I have behind me. This one is called Popcorn, and it comes out sort of green at first, and then it goes more white and gets a tinge of pink, and then it gets very pink. So, wow, it's very interesting. And those branches can be cut for arranging, and they're just beautiful. Another fantastic plant that will loves part shade. Now, it needs some sunshine to grow well, and it'll actually grow in afternoon sun, but it'll be a little demanding as far as water is concerned. A stilby. And there are many, many different varieties of the stilby. And here again, some of the different varieties are early, mid, and later in the season. So if you've got an area where these work really well for you, um, the foliage is beautiful. Even when they go out of bloom and they turn a brownish color, they still have a presence in the garden. As you can see, even though, as I said, this is not necessarily a design program today, it's very attractive with the hosta that's behind it because you get that wonderful contrast of color, but also the contrast of texture of the leaves. And so that makes it very interesting. Okay, arranging. I do enjoy doing really neat arrangements every now and then. And of course, the marketing department here asked me to do that. And I'm very pleased because it gives me an excuse to do that kind of arranging. Most of the time, I have to admit to you that I have a tendency to walk the walk, enjoy the garden, pick some things, bring them back into the house, and put them into a container or two that's in the kitchen and put them above the kitchen sink. So I don't always do the fancy arrangements, but I do enjoy it. And here I have really used a lot of a still me, and it is a contrast again of texture and form in here. And I have also used a lot of hydrangea. These really are long lasting arrangements, and so they're a lot of fun. Yeah. Here's another one. And this one is the very blue hydrangea, and it's with blue larkspur, which is from the garden. I grow a lot of things from seed, and the larkspur is fantastic. And I've gone out to look to see how much of that has reseeded in the garden, and I have a lot of it. So I look forward to showing you sometime in the near future when it gets up and blooming how beautiful larkspur can be. Larkspur is not a plant that you will find as little plants in the annual section because it is an annual. For some reason, people want a plant that already has a flower on it, and that is not how larkspur behaves. So if you like that, by all means, buy some larkspur seed and get them started. You can plant them directly in your garden and they work beautifully. Okay, other things that I enjoy from the garden, yarrow and the Coronation Gold, the yarrow that you see here, the yellow one. And across from that is gray. Gray is a plant that is beautiful as a design aspect in the garden because it goes with everything and it's a nice contrast of color. But this particular variety does throw up interesting blooms also, which can be picked and used in arrangements. They can also be dried. And by the way, we'll mention a little bit about this at the end, that a lot of these flowers are beautiful as dried flowers. And certainly that yarrow Coronation Gold is top of the list because if you pick it in its prime and hang it upside down to dry in a cool, dry place, it is perfectly beautiful as a dried flower. Okay, I am not anti-chemical, but I am very judicious use of chemicals because we are all out there pushing nature, providing habitat. And if we aren't careful, we will kill these beneficials, the birds, the bees, and the butterflies. And I do enjoy them so much. And this particular one, which I think is a swallowtail, okay, um, is on not deal. fennel, bronze fennel. And that also is beautiful for cutting to bring in and making arrangements. It's a very filmy, frilly kind of filler thing. Okay. Here again is a mass planting with the yarrow. And there are some other little things. I believe some of it is phlox, but this is a large area that is actually a very steep bank at my house. And this is the area in which a lot of that, I encourage seeding in here. And I will have a lot of larkspur and a lot of other things, a lot of poppies that seed in here, and they're all bird, bee, and butterfly friendly. And so I will, from time to time, be talking to you about that area because there's a lot going on there. Another quick little view of it. And at the top of that bank is a row of lavender. Lavender is fantastic as a cut flower. And of course, it's incredibly fragrant. I can't be without it. But it has some positive needs. And top of that list is good drainage. It will not tolerate wet feet at any time of the year, particularly in the winter time. And so if you want to grow lavender, it needs sun and it gets at least 7 hours of direct sun here. There is nowhere in my garden that I have a full day of sun. And so when you see plants that say full sun, you can have very good luck with those plants if you have at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sun. And that applies to lavender also. But this is at the top of that bank. I do not mulch that plant except with some gravel that is along that gravel path because they don't like to be mulched heavily except with, as I said, some gravel. There's Echinacea growing there, the dill, the fennel, all of those are with the filmy little sort of thing that fills in, and then the Queen Anne's lace. And then let's come back to me for just let's talk about this lavender for a second, because lavender is so important, and we have so many people who want to grow lavender. But there are those things that you do need to understand to make it work. This is a new one. And now I have grown this for 2 years. The gentleman that produced this plant gave me a start of it a couple of years ago. It is called Phenomenal. And it is indeed phenomenal. It is, the color is brilliant, the shape is brilliant, and the blossoms are incredibly fragrant. Now, to succeed with this, it will bloom soon in the garden, and it will be a lovely, because I've shaped it somewhat, a lovely mound of blooms. If, when those blooms have dried and gone by, and they last for quite several weeks, if you trim just below where the blossom is, it will rebloom in the fall. Now, having said that this phenomenal is fantastic, there are other varieties that I've grown that are fantastic also. And new varieties that I haven't even tried. But the larger growing ones, Grosso is one that's great. Provence is another one that's great. But when you're planting your lavender, give it excellent drainage, okay? And do not mulch into the plant. It does not like that. Let's go back. Go to the next one, please. Okay, I grow whatever I can with the sunshine that I have. And so this is actually a corner of my back garden that I have herbs and vegetables in. And I wanted to grow a section that would attract the birds, bees, and butterflies, because the more diversity that you have, and the more of the birds, bees, and butterflies, the fewer insect problems you're going to have. And it really has worked beautifully for me. Now, and then I use it as a cutting garden too. What is in there? They're pink zinnias. There's marigolds, and yes, they make great cut flowers, and they're edible if you like the flavor, but they're fantastic for garnish also. There's various types of zinnias. In the way back is straw flower. And there again, that's a great one to dry because it literally is dried while it's fully alive. And then you'll see a tall and wispy and airy plant that is Verbena bonariensis. My daughter calls it Verbena on the stick. Another little section, a close up of that is the old fashioned, what I call the old fashioned bachelor's button, the purple that you see. And that one is likewise dried on the stem. You can cut it and it stays perfect. You cut it in its prime as a dried flower, but it is a great flower to arrange with also. Gumfrina is probably the name you'll see it called in the nursery. And then in the foreground is one of the salvia, one of the blue salvias, which is really a fantastic plant. I don't think I went that because I don't think that it was in bloom. Okay, there. This one is a lovely, lovely called Perennial Salvia, and there's a couple of new ones off of this now. It's one of the blue bloom ones. Okay, and again, another beautiful salvia, Mystic Spires is this Mystic Spires. Beautiful cut flower. Back to that garden, which is a little different time of the year, and they're just beginning, is a perennial, Rudbeckia hirta, Hirta. And it's quasi perennial, but it always drops seeds and always comes back for me. And we always called it, as I was growing up, Gloriosa Daisy. Makes a beautiful cut flower, and the birds, bees, and butterflies absolutely love it. You can see a tiny bit of blue there that is the larkspur. Hopefully, we're going to see a whole lot more of that blue coming up soon. More of the Gloriosa Daisy, the Rudbeckia. And then you can see I do have some grasses mixed in with this. Grasses are valuable for arranging also. It, with the blades of the grass are interesting, but later in the fall, the plumes are very interesting. Okay, another view of that same area, a slightly different time, and you're getting all of those echinacea, and you're getting glads and Shasta daisies, a lot of wonderful hyssop is the yellowish one that you see, and that is fantastic as a cut flower. And the more you cut it, the more it blooms. Lilies. You can plant, we have these as bare root bulbs that you can still get in the ground and they'll bloom. And we will also have them in the perennial section. These are marvelous, marvelous cut flowers. I never cut the full stem. I cut the individual blossoms. It's fantastic. Later in the season, in that same area, down at the bottom of the hill, because these things don't mind having slightly moist feet, not wet feet. Joe Pye weed, great cut flower too. In front of that, as you can see, there's a small miscanthus grass that I use the plumes and that the birds, bees, and butterflies love. And the white that was, if you can go back, there we go. The white that's in the front is a phlox. I think it's Phlox David, which is very mildew resistant. And then there is a yellow one that's called Petrina. Now, this is what I do with a lot of those things. Those are the Gloriosa daisies that I call their Rudbeckia hirta. I've used some of my Queen Anne's lace in there as a filler. There is another, I call them my H plants that are perennials, Helianthus, Helenium. They're all staged together pretty much in the perennial section, and they all bloom in late summer, fall. Fantastic. And you will also see some zinnias in there. I grow a lot of zinnias from seed, and they are an incredible, incredible cut flower. And boy, do the butterflies love them. They do. This is a fun thing too, a Ringium. Uh, a pretty nice blue. There aren't a lot of blues in the perennial world, but this is a good one. Here is a fantastic one. There's some salvia growing here with this, but I love this little tiny daisy plant that I have here. And I've just all of a sudden blanked out. So I'm going to think about that and come back to you on it. Okay. Nicotiana. It makes a good cut flower. It's very fragrant. I love it. And look at the plumes of that. That's an annual grass. And it's fantastic too. And there's also phlox in that particular picture. And clematis, or clematis, as you wish. A beautiful, beautiful plant that you can also trim. And it's nice little airy thing that can be used in arrangements. This is one of the tiny little bell-shaped ones. I don't, it was planted long ago and I have no idea what the cultivar is, but there are a lot of very sweet little bell-shaped ones. So come in and have a look and see what you are. Another fantastic plant for end of the season. And this is really very end of the season because these are from the hardy mums in the perennial section. And most of them are of the variety of Sheffield mums. And they come in different colors, different shades or tones of this that you see. I even have one that's yellow and they're very loose and very airy. I usually pinch only once to try to keep them a little more compact, but they're not at all like the little bedding mum that we sell in the fall. And I do really enjoy these as a ranging thing. And you are again seeing another salvia at the top of that, and also the plumes of ornamental grass. They're again fun to do arrangements in the fall. I love the brilliant colors. And the gray that you see is Dusty Miller. This is an annual Dusty Miller, and I love to grow it because it's beautiful in containers, it's beautiful in the ground, and it's lovely to cut and use and enhance the other colors that you're working with. There are a lot of dahlias in this design. There's a lot of branches of various shrubs that are in there. And I'm trying to remember some of the other things that are there. But primarily it's dahlias, which are lovely cut flowers and need to be used as cut flowers because the more you cut them, and you definitely have to deadhead, and they'll go into frost. They can be put in soon as all frost is over. They don't like the frost. Again, here's another one. Using the plumes of that miscanthus grass and various and sundry other shrubs that have begun to take on color, and the Dusty Miller and Celosia. Celosia is another one that is a great cut flower and wonderful for drying also. And I do love cameras. We haven't gotten any in yet, but in the next 2 weeks we will. And I love the broad leaf, using it in the garden, but those leaves can be trimmed and used as you see. It's a mound of mums at the base, and then shooting up from that are the grasses and combined with that canna leaf. And I'm rather partial to that arrangement. Here's another very different one. Could be a centerpiece, and it's using a lot of celosia. The little purple that you see coming out of that is Verbena bonariensis. And there's also fern in there and some of the hardy begonia foliage, the stackies or lamb's ear, and some of the euonymus that's turning colors. So there's a lot going on in that arrangement. But all of those plants are beautiful in the garden also. Drying. I enjoy the dried flowers. And they last for a very long time, actually. I still have, and I've got to change it out soon, a huge arrangement of dried flowers now at my house. And when they're staged in your home and they get sunshine, they will fade somewhat. But you know, Design Master makes the neatest little sprays, and if you're careful, you can touch up with a little blue on the hydrangea or touch up with other little purples and colors, and it comes right back, and it's pretty fantastic. This is how I do it. I hang dry them in their peak. You don't wait until they're finished, but any of these flowers in their peak, I put them in small bunches and hang dry them where it's dry and warm, but not in the sunshine. Okay, this carries us through. It carries us through with some of the interesting things that you can have to enjoy in the garden and bring into your home. And then we will go into the winter. But I do want to say that in addition to the perennials and some a few of the annuals that I've mentioned, the shrubs are incredible for arranging. And this is Ilex. There's a lot of the red berries that you see there, winterberry, it's called. And they are beautiful to arrange with. They're beautiful in the garden. And then the grasses are lovely, and they can be used throughout the season to design with. This one is sprayed gold and used in conjunction with greens. So this is going into the winter, into Christmas. All righty, let's come back here. Let's talk before we take questions. Let's talk about just a few other plants, okay? Behind me, let's see, a little heavy. This is not an arrangement per se. This is my typical put it in a vase, okay? This is a wonderful, wonderful viburnum, very similar to the popcorn, and I hope you can see this. It is incredible. It's in bloom right now in my garden. It is just gorgeous because I picked these this morning. It's a large plant. It's a wonderful plant as a mixture in a border for privacy planting. Yes, it loses its leaves in the wintertime, but it's fantastic in throughout the year. Blooms in the springtime. This one does not set berries, but it's just lovely to work with. It comes out as green at first and then turns a wonderful, wonderful white. And don't dismiss the various azaleas that are coming into bloom. But that's usually when I see my first hummingbirds, by the way. They come to the azaleas first. And I love to arrange with those also. So don't dismiss beautiful, beautiful shrubs. Again, you can buy the lilies in packages. There's 3 in here and plant according to the directions. I've actually already planted a few of these because they tolerate the cool soil and it's perfectly all right to do that. And I didn't bring up with me, but we also sell glad bulbs. We don't sell them as plants, but we sell the bulbs. And if you plant some, for instance, this week and some more 3 weeks from now and some more 2 weeks from now. You'll get continuous color and bloom from those, and they are fantastic cut flowers also. Let's talk about a couple of other things that I really, really do like. This particular plant is a called cat's pajamas. It's a new variety, so I haven't planted this one. I'm going to have to do that. It's the Nepeta, Nepeta, cat's pajamas. But this is a smaller one. There are some that get much bigger than this. And when it finishes with this bloom, you can see these little side shoots coming here. When that bloom is finished, if you cut just above leaves like so, all these will bloom. And then when they have finished, if you snip those, you'll keep this plant in bloom for a long, long time. And again, it's lovely as a cut flower. Another perennial that is attractive and blooms throughout the entire season, and it is either pink or white, is Gaura, Gaura, Gaura. It's a very airy plant with a fine little, as I said, usually pink or white flower. Doesn't have to be deadheaded and can be cut and brought in. I do like that. Now, there are some people that are not fond of butterfly bush because some of them seed around quite a bit. And that can be problematical in some areas. I cannot be without butterfly bush because it is a magnet, but it's also a beautiful, beautiful cut flower. This one is one that I have not grown. It's called Buzz Sky Blue. And I doubt you can see that, but it's a lovely, lovely plant. And as I said, there's a cut flower, but also incredible butterfly wood. What else do we have here? Ah, bee balm. I'm talking to you, all these plants that I'm talking to you about are versatile. They're beautiful in the garden. They're nice to cut and bring inside. And they're also bird, bee, and butterflies. So you're accomplishing a lot when you use these types of plants in your garden. And where do you use them? Not everybody has a large garden, but these plants can be integrated into your existing garden in small sections. Um, I have various smaller areas within a larger garden because I go for the sunshine. Most of these plants need sunshine, need at least a minimum of 6 to 8 hours. They're not shade plants, but hey, if you've just got nothing but a shade garden, there are plants that I use for ranging there also. I have many, many bulbs, and there's still a lot of bulbs in bloom right now in my garden, and they are fantastic. Cut and bring inside. I do it all the time. And then there are other hosta, even. The hosta leaves are lovely, and the blooms are lovely. I enjoy the blooms. A lot of people don't, but I do. I think they're beautiful. So, Monarda, a major attractor. Birds, bees, and butterflies, but good for cut flower also. And then look through the perennial section for, again, a long blooming plant that is just, this one's just coming into bud. And there are different colors. Penstemon, Penstin. Where is it? Penstemon. Okay. This one happens to be red. Again, you could cut those stems and more will come and it will continue to bloom. And so deadheading, if you aren't using it as cut flowers or using it as cut flowers, encourages these plants to continue to bloom. With the annuals in particular, their greatest ambition is to bloom, drop their seeds, and they're done. So if you keep cutting them they keep trying to reproduce themselves. So that's how you keep them in continuous bloom. Um, one more thing here, and then we will take some questions if you'd like. This one is very rarely planted, and it should be planted more. It's actually one of my favorites. And some people say, oh, I don't like the color. It's sort of magenta. I personally like it. I love the gray foliage and I love the flower. It's a little round flower that's yay big, maybe an inch, inch and a half across, that comes up in groups, and it will come up from this foliage and probably be 2.5 feet tall. Lovely for cutting. Blooms in the summertime. A favorite of mine, and it is a perennial, and you'll find it in our perennial section. I mentioned again, and here again, another great cut flower, phlox. This one is white. It's phlox David, and you can prolong the bloom if you choose to when it's established by pinching out the centerpiece of 2 or 3 of them. The others will bloom first, and then those will come. And if you cut them, they'll throw out shoots from the sides and continue to bloom. So you can keep this plant in bloom also by using as a cut flower, because it'll continuously send shoots up from the side and bloom for a longer period of time. I think that we have covered most of what I have right here. I wanted to leave some time today for some questions. Sally, do we have some questions?
We do, yes. And Peg, before we get started, I just want to make a couple of notes to everybody because we're changing things around a little bit following the class. So, for those of you who are new, or for those of you who usually request recordings from us, or if you need to for any reason, we usually in the past have made them available upon request by emailing me. We are actually going to change that as classes have grown and demand has grown, which is great. We're actually just going to start sending the link out to the full email list along with the coupon and the survey. So look for that. So you don't now, if you can email us if you have questions, of course, but you won't need to email us for the recording. So just so everybody knows that. Next, if we don't get to your question today, as always, please feel free to follow up with us after class, and we would be happy to address any questions that you have. Peg, I'm going to start with questions that apply more generally to everybody, and then if we have time to move on to some of the more specific flowers, we'll do that.
Okay.
So the first question we have is from someone who's interested in seed starting. So she wanted to know if you prefer more specifically to direct seed your zinnias, but then if you could talk a little bit about direct seeding any plants, how do you do that? Do you do that?
Absolutely. And there is definitely a technique to that. And you're asking, do I prefer to do? I have an extensive garden, okay? And so I do start a lot in place in the garden with seeds. We also have those as plants. And wanting instant, which I do, and everybody else seems to, I like to buy some of those plants that are established and put those into the garden to begin to bloom while the others are coming on. You can also start your seeds indoors and then wait until the frost is past. And here we are close to that. I think we have like 41 predicted for Friday night and Saturday night, perhaps. But of course, those things can change too. So you still have to watch the weather a little bit. And if you've already put things out, be prepared to cover it. We sell frost cloth, which is fantastic. Lightweight, can be left on for a couple of days easily, longer than that if you choose. Or if you don't have that, a sheet or a pillowcase or something. If it gets usually below 40 with some of these tender things, the perennials you don't have to worry about usually, unless they're hot out of a greenhouse, which makes a difference. But I do like to seed. Now, I have to be totally honest with you, you're fighting a little bit of a battle when you do that because the weeds love to grow too. So you have to be able to determine what's the weed and what is the zinnia that you planted. I don't, I'm careful the time of the year that I mulch. When all these seeds are dropping, I actually mulching once they're all up is the best time to do this because you don't want to mulch too heavily over them, or it's like preventing weeds. It'll also prevent those. So I don't go out right now at this time of the year and do mulching where I'm trying to seed. I'm mulching other places. But those areas that I want these seeds to reproduce, I don't mulch yet. I wait until those plants are up and then I mulch, trying to help control the weeds somewhat. I'll never control like that big bank. I'll never control all the weeds in that bank. It's too big. And I have no gardener. Okay, so these plants have to live with a certain number of weeds. But just mark the area. It can be a small area, but it has to be bare soil. Follow your depths wise, follow your directions, and then water. Don't let it go bone dry. Lately, we haven't worried about that because we had a rain almost every day. But anyway, don't let it go bone dry. Be watchful of it. And if you do get some weeds that are coming with your zinnias or marigolds or whatever you planted, it might be rather than pulling that weed, which will disturb those plants, maybe it's a better idea to snip it and get rid of it and let this plant grow without disturbing its root system. I hope that makes sense to you. Okay. So you can do small areas, pull back the mulch, bare soil, and do your seeding, watchful of it. And then a lot of these things will reseed. My zinnias don't reseed, okay? Some of the marigolds don't usually, some of them don't reseed, but the the half hardy annuals is what we call them, whether it's larkspur or a few of these other things. Lavender mist is another one. Cosmos will sometimes reseed. So just be watchful. And I do have a lot of the Shirley poppies and the California poppies, and just learn to recognize the little seedlings. It's fun to me, okay? It's a little bit of work, but it's fun. But I like to start with plants too. So I do buy some plants to put in. Instant gratification.
That's always good. So we've had two requests. A lot of people have come back to me asking for an ID. One is of the viburnum in the back that you were showing with the white flowers. Which type of viburnum is that?
It's very similar to popcorn.
Corn? Okay.
But this particular variety is seems similar to Brookwood Eye, but this is not fragrant. And it's been in my garden for many years. I brought it in this morning, and it's been a challenge to have everybody look at it and make an exact identification.
Got it. Okay. So
But
for anybody who's looking for something similar, maybe popcorn
popcorn,
would be
I
comparable.
suggest.
Okay. And what about the gray plant with the magenta flowers that you just showed?
Gray with the
Gray
magenta.
foliage. Over.
Oh, oh, this is absolutely beautiful. And if you got, this is probably not on your list, I don't think. Lychnis, Lychnis, coronaria, Coronaria, Lychnis coronaria. And it will be in bloom soon for a period of time. You can save seeds from this too, or shake them around, and often they will reseed. Love this place. Yes.
Thank you.
Lychnis coronaria.
We had a lot of interest in both of those, so thank you very much. Next question is from someone who's interested in growing. So this person specifically is interested in Agastache, but I think this, sorry, translates a little bit more generally. If you want to grow cut flowers in containers, is there a way to do that?
You just plant it in a container. You know, no,
Are there
no.
any that are
I
particularly
I
good for
love
containers?
I love containers. I did, you know, just absolutely love them. I have far more than I should. And Agastache, actually, I am going to plant these particular plants in containers above a brick wall in my garden that the hummingbirds come to, and there's got to be at least 15 large containers up there. So all of these salvia and agastache, there's several varieties of this and several colors, and they are going as soon as I've got bulbs in there right now. I have the kale that is blooming, and I want that to finish blooming. And I will take out some of those things, and then I will put these things into the containers. They are large containers, at least 18 inches across. 16 to 18 inches is sort of minimum for growing these things, but they're a joy. They can be used as cut flowers, but I can assure you they are hummingbird magnets. And they come in the morning, they come in the evening. I love to sit on the front porch and just enjoy the flowers and the hummingbirds. They're fantastic. So yes, you can grow things in containers. As I say, the beauty of containers is they're mobile.
Yeah, that's definitely good. Um,
Mobile.
can you discuss a little bit when you're cutting branches of flowers from shrubs or from hydrangeas? Is there a method that you use to do that?
Well, not really. With hydrangeas, I just go, depending upon the length that you want, I just go, let's say that, what is a good example? There's not a good example here. Okay, let's say this is a hydrangea and the bloom is here. I'm going to cut it as long as I need to do the job of the arranging that I'm going to do. And then if it's a rebloomer, it will throw out buds from beneath there and hopefully bloom later in the summer when that foliage has matured. Some of the older varieties won't bloom again until next year, but there are a lot of rebloomers out there now. So that if you cut and enjoy bringing them in, and they make great cut flowers, they really do. They're going to rebloom on new wood later in the summer because they do both. I haven't had as heavy a bloom in the late summer on the second bloom as the first bloom. Okay. So here again, when we had that heavy frost a couple of weeks ago, I was out covering hydrangeas, and it's beneficial to do so. Okay. So with the viburnum, they're not going to rebloom, and I just cut it to shape it somewhat, and you don't even really have to worry about shaping it very much, you know. But these can be accent plants, but they primarily are growing as a part of a very diverse privacy situation. Yeah, they're wonderful for that. They're mixed with a few evergreens, some boxwood, some beautiful crepe myrtle, and it's all in a row that gives me privacy, and they're part of that as an understory and around the big crepe myrtles. Yes.
Do you have any tips for preserving flowers once you've cut them and placed them in a vase?
Particularly, yes, there are things that definitely help with their longevity. And number one, they you can take water with you into the garden, make your cuts and put it into the water right away. You don't want to cut and leave those stems out for a long period of time, or cut your flowers and go quickly back to the house and put them into, I like to put them into some lukewarm water. That's not absolutely necessary, but that's what I like to do. And then I like to let them sit and absorb and hydrate for a couple of hours. Again, I don't always do that either, but it's a good idea. And then when you've made your arrangement, they're little packets, and we sell them downstairs of preservatives that can be dissolved in the water. And then it helps to actually pour out the old water periodically, depending upon how elaborate the arrangement is, okay? Either adding to or pouring out and putting fresh water in again with fresh preservative in it. If you had a vase of flowers from the florist, that's usually pretty easy to do, okay? If you're doing fancies, like some of those arrangements might not be so easy to do. In fact, some of those are done in Oasis. And I prefer to do them in just plain with a pin holder or stacking them inside. And you can add, be sure that you add to that and don't let it run out of water. That's pretty much what you can do. Yes.
Thanks, Peg. We've had a couple of questions coming about Astilbe. The first one was if you could repeat the name, or if you have the name of the purple Astilbe that you showed. And the second is, do you have any care tips for Astilbe? We have people who love the flowers but are having trouble successfully growing them.
Oh, well, I can't imagine anybody having trouble with it, because would you believe I have them seed all over the place? And I believe that the variety, the one that I showed you, the purple one, is called Purple Candles. They'll still be Purple Candles, but there are several others. And as I said, there are those that bloom early, mid-season, and some after that. So you get some continuity. Astilbe does not want to be in dry shade. It will not perform well for you in dry shade. My soil is pretty good because I worked it for many, many years. I don't work it anymore at all. I love to use leaf compost on it, and you can buy that here bulk or by the bag. Leaf compro, not compro, leaf compost. Um, it's great, and then the earthworms take it down and improve the soil over time. You don't need to work it yourself. So planting them in good soil in an area that's not wet but doesn't go bone dry. And if it does, and we have a drought in the summertime, then you'll need to water. Okay. And as I said, they will grow in a lot of sunshine, but they will demand to be watered because they like moisture. I have them in various parts of my garden in varying degrees of sun and shade, and they're absolutely delightful. And when they're finished blooming, I leave them up, even though the blossoms are now brown. I've even been guilty of going out and spraying them purple. It's amazing what you can do. It's like some of the allium, the purple allium. You take that little can of purple spray and spray those things. Oh, that's fun, you know. A little curiosity in the garden never hurts.
Yeah, nope, it never does. Okay, so I know we only have time for a couple more questions. So I want to start with one from someone who says, I would love to start a cutting garden, but I'm really concerned about the amount of maintenance it's going to take. Could you talk basic plant maintenance? Are there any plants that you can use for cutting flowers that are very easy to grow and take care of?
I have tried to show you the plants that I feel are easier to take care of. If we eliminate seeding, okay, from this, because yes, that takes some care. Let's say that you have a group of 3 of the Nepeta near the front of the border, and you've got some taller penstemon back here, and maybe you add a couple of other plants. The one thing that I do in areas where it works, because it doesn't work, you cannot do this on top of bulbs, okay, or they won't come back. But in areas where I don't have bulbs and where I can do this, I will put down some newspaper, not one thin piece, but several thicknesses of newspaper, wetting it and mulch on top of it, okay? So you've got your groupings of perennials, and then you've got mulch, but there's newspaper underneath it that helps to keep the weeds down. So that's a help, okay? If you can't do that, then you're just going to have to mulch well and then pull a few weeds. It's just the way it is.
Good. Thank you.
There's maintenance to everything, but
That-
you can reduce it, you know. You
yeah.
can. I have to.
All right, I guess we have time. It looks like maybe for one more question. So this person says that lilies scare them due to some tiger lilies they inherited from their grandparents' garden. They're now threatening to take over the entire garden. So are other lilies, do they spread as well as the tiger lilies, or perhaps too much in this case? Or are other lilies a little bit less prolific in their spreading?
You know, they're very different. The tiger lilies, they're lilies, but they're a different kind of lily. And they have these little bulbils. When they come into bloom, they have little bulbils that are seeds. And it's those seeds that drop and become new plants. The other types of lilies, the ones that I showed you here, this is an Oriental Lily. This particular one, number one, they're incredibly fragrant, but they don't have those little seeds. And I've never had them reseed, never have. Now, I absolutely love the other lilies, the tiger lilies, and I don't mind some reseeding because I've got the space. All right, you're tired of that. You're tired of hoeing them up. Uh, you know, if there's an area you want to get rid of some of them, then here again, put down several layers of newspaper, wet it down, and mulch on top of it, and then you don't have to worry about it. Okay.
Thank you, Peg. All right, it is just after 1 o'clock, so I think it's about time for us to wind down. Quick reminder to everybody, if you want a recording, just remember that link is now coming out by email with the survey and the coupon. So keep an eye out for that. Because we're sending the recording, the email may not come out until tomorrow morning. Sometimes it takes a while for that to get loaded in. It just takes a while to process. So just keep an eye out for that in the next 24 hours. Peg, is there anything you'd like to wrap up with before we close?
Just enjoy your garden. It's so important to support nature, and you'll love it. You know, yes, it is a little bit of work, but it's good for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Peg. Peg, thanks again. Everybody who attended today, thank you so much. Please feel free to follow up with us if you have any questions. And everybody have a good day.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Peg.
Bye bye.